Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, September 10th, starting really late in the evening again. I was awake at like 8 in the morning, but then I was also going 16 plus hours awake at that point and just didn't feel like I could form a cogent sentence for as much as I can normally form a cogent sentence if I started streaming at that point, so I chose to go to sleep instead, which then ends up me waking up at 8 in the evening, basically, 12 hours later. They say there's such a thing as sleeping too much. I don't know if I believe that or not, like, because I think it's probably more a factor if you're sleeping more than the 8 to 10 hours you probably should be sleeping, and let's face it, even the 8 hours is probably just a made up number to keep people waking up early and like keep people waking up early and working like farming style jobs. That would be my guess as to what's really going on there. Yeah, so yeah, but I think if you're having poor quality sleep for 8 hours versus having really good quality sleep for 8 hours, it makes a major difference in quality. For the accountability section, since this is a Friday, we're going to mostly try and just burn through everything today as quickly as possible, also particularly since we started late. Force craft or portal craft. Win 4 victories. Might as well just stick with that. I am, at this point, almost completely done with the Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I have gotten every single completion mark for every single character with the exception of the Lost, which I haven't bothered to unlock. And that's and so now it's just gonna be 1 second. I need to grab my tablet.
I bring unto you serenity.
It's in the way.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
Move it out of the way. Okay. Yeah. There's really nothing more that can be done other than, turns out some items do boss rush. Some items do unlock for completing boss rush for each of the characters. So that explains some characters and some unlocks, but there's still basically a case of like somewhere around 34 secrets or items that haven't been unlocked. Yeah, 34 secrets that haven't been unlocked, when at best I can account for maybe 24 secrets, which I can only really account for even that much by assuming that you unlock items by beating Satan and the Blue and Isaac, which are basically mid-tier bosses, just after Mom's Heart on hard mode. But then there is also questions, certainly as far as if I was to get the completion marks that don't unlock anything done on hard in Rebirth, and then I install the Afterbirth DLC that would potentially unlock something, I feel like you either have to do it a second time there, would be my guess, or you install that DLC and then just immediately it unlocks hundreds of items out of a DLC that only adds a couple hundred items. So yeah, and this basically is going to be the last episode in which I'll beg for someone to friend me on Steam and gift me Afterbirth Plus, and Repentance in that order. Like, one of those will give me an excuse to keep on playing, but honestly, I could definitely see taking a bit of a break too.
100% string and 0% fluff. A spin and a
Let's
twirl
see.
and out. There's our puppy today.
1, 2, 3.
An opportunity for growth.
And really haven't been accomplishing too much of anything else. It's just been a lot of trying to figure out what I did stupidly wrong. At some point I copied a folder of files into another subfolder of files and then forgot about it, and it's taken up like a massive amount of space on my backup hard drive, and so I'm just trying to find the duplicates and undo that mistake, which it's a huge mistake. And I'm trying out software for that. I'm trying to figure out a workflow as far as organizing music and movie files. I have figured out some interesting tricks of just my own custom code that I should probably put that up on like a GitHub or something as something, because it's not a terrible thing, where it uses a program called ImageMagick, which I just heard had a whole bunch of security flaws in it, 0-day security flaws in it that need to be patched, because it uses GhostScript, which is a command line code for like decrypting PDFs in Linux mostly. So yeah, but you install this program called ImageMagick, and then you can make command line commands to edit pictures. So you can take a picture and then turn it into an icon a lot easier, instead of doing it through a GUI based Windows program, which is what I was doing before. And you can just automate the thing, and that's what I'm trying to do, is have the whole setup become very centered around the idea of, here is a bat file, you click on it, it just does everything in the subfolders, and sets everything up. I'm trying to figure out how to make playlists, and honestly, to get the playlist nicely, I'm probably gonna have to use yet another program. So at this point, I've got Tiny Media Manager, I've got MP4 tag editor, I've got ImageMagick, I've got bat files, I've got a Windows registry hack to get rid of the blue arrows in the top right that was showing up on everything. Turned out that was an indicator, and Windows does not explain this anywhere, that was an indicator that the files were compressed. And yes, it is a NTF compressed drive. So why does every single file on a compressed drive need blue arrows pointing towards each other to, I guess, imply that it's compressed? Like, that doesn't make sense. I would assume if it was a compressed file, first of all, you'd use an icon that looked like a vice compressing files or books. Something like WinZip's icon, not just blue arrows. But not having the ability to turn it off, and frankly, if you look up how to turn off the blue arrows on Google, it just says, well, disable the compression, and I'm like, that is the stupidest response that you could possibly make. It's like, obviously, if you've turned on compression, you're concerned about taking up too much space. You're not going to make a bigger problem by disabling compression just to get rid of blue icons. So basically, you have to make a blank icon that is see-through, and then do a registry hack to tell it to use that blank icon instead. It's not much of a hack, it's one line in the registry, but it's still something that is kind of ridiculous. You can't go and click a box somewhere. Yeah, it's ridiculous that that's the default option. see. Alright, well that worked somewhat well. But yeah, and I'm also using Music Bee to try and work on the music. I had to write some custom code using its functions to sort the folders and organize the folders the way I want it to be organized. It's still a very manual process, though.
Don't underestimate me.
There is a debate in my mind, since there are competing standards, as it were. Some programs are looking for a cover.jpg, some are looking for folder.jpg. I could even see there being a split there between here's what the cover of a CD or DVD case would look like, but that's not what I want to use for the folder, so I've made a different image called folder.jpg. I could see people doing that, so by default you would probably want to start with the cover with the folder.jpg and then try the cover.jpg. But as I'm trying to not waste a whole bunch of files and I'm trying to embed everything into the files themselves, it is more ideal to probably only have FLAC files or MP3 files in the folder, plus a playlist, which that's where MP3 tag is going to have to come in to try and make relative paths for the playlist. Does seem like you can fairly easily make playlists for recursive folders, which is ideal because every subfolder should have a playlist in my mind. Of course, that only makes sense in long-running compilation series of music or long-running discographies of characters. So, yeah, the default way they like to organize folders for MP3s really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it makes an assumption that I don't know if it's true, that people, when they want to listen to music, want to listen to a specific singer's entire disc, which is, frankly, looking at it from the perspective of the music industry and people selling their discs. Whereas I think most people that want to listen to music want to listen to something closer to a Spotify playlist that is randomizing it, or something closer to what is on a what is on the radio, which is again more randomized, maybe thematically similar items, but or thematically similar characters or songs. But I don't know how you organize that really. So I guess you probably do want to just subdivide amongst the artist and then the album and then the disc, the CD number if there's multiple CDs, which that was a thing at one time, certainly. Yeah, that you would have 2-disc albums, 3-disc albums, 4-disc albums, even a lot more. And I haven't been in a Walmart in a very, very long time, but I suspect at this point, if you go into any kind of general storefront like a Walmart Supercenter, you're going to find very little as far as music and DVDs on the shelf. And you basically would have to go into a bookstore or use record store or like a music store, if such a thing still exists. It would have to be some kind of small indie run store to even begin to think about having a good collection of CDs. And I don't think too many people are using CDs. The music industry has failed miserably, and this has nothing to do with video games, and I'm just kind of wandering around and rambling, but they've really failed to embrace like cheap write once micro SD cards that have albums in them, or cheap write once USB sticks that have something on them. There is perhaps a slightly smaller barrier to entry to piracy if you get a USB stick or a micro SD, but not really. Like, the barrier to entry is basically zero anyway, so it would be a silly argument to not embrace new technology. What they need is something that could be etched specifically as a chip on demand, and there is probably not a solution that's cheap enough for that, but there is probably a source out there that could give you a really, really bad quality reject level flash memory in very small quantities. Like, you really only would need a gigabyte at most for an album. Like, you're not talking super big. Maybe you go as high as a Blu-ray where it's like 25 or 50 gigabytes. But even at that, if you have a rejected chip that you're literally just going to write to, and then you're going to disable, put it in a read-only mode. I think flash RAM has to be rewritten over and over again, but even at that, I think you don't have to have anywhere the level of numbers of writes before it fails compared to a regular flash device. And yeah, I think the music industry has also failed miserably to not embrace MKVs and try and bundle acoustic versions versus karaoke versions, which are slightly different, and live lyrics. I'm gonna see if I can put synchronized lyrics, is what they're really called, embedded into an MP3 file, and if I can do that, then that would be really nice too. Although, frankly, if everything is just embedded in the file, then there needs to be a few softwares out there that would let you take it out. Because synchronized lyrics would also be very nice if you could just pull it out as a text file and use that and read it, instead of having to potentially play the audio in the file and then have the synchronized work. But yeah, with synchronized lyrics and a karaoke version of the audio track, there you've got a new generation of karaoke that is way better than what the old version of karaoke, for as much as people care about karaoke, which I don't think is that much. But yeah, had they embraced that new technology, then that would have been nicer. They've also totally failed to embrace how a music artist is supposed to, as a standard, encode for surround sound. It seems like you're pretty much still mostly getting stereo, and even stereo is kind of questionable if it's just one person singing in a microphone that really is mono at that point. So if you were gonna do a like 7.1, 9.2, something like that surround sound setup, you basically would have to have a virtual sound stage set up in every recording studio that knows where the microphones are and is going to place the person singing, playing the drums in the back left if they're in the back left, and the person playing the bass guitar in the front right if they're in the front right. Which, yeah. They definitely haven't really tried to go for that.
Terminating hostile life
Hold
form.
still. Another time then.
Yeah, and really is a failing in the music industry itself. It's not like TV or movies magically replaces music. Like they're completely different things. So
Hostile unit confirmed.
it really is just a case of an industry failing to innovate and instead just being made up of stodgy old music producers who are trying to line their pockets before they can retire. Like otherwise this would be way better. Even iTunes, which probably has made the most amount of progress as far as music, has really failed to innovate as much as it should have. Oh, let's play this. And then attack this. And then
What fine threads you have.
play that.
This'll be over quick. Truth and lies. Hold still. You wouldn't.
Terminating hostile life form.
You wouldn't.
Anyways, that is enough rambling, so let's go through the video game news. It is Friday, so we don't have to go through all the games that came out. We'll leave some for Monday. But let's go to the video game news. This doesn't need to be a super long series. Video Game Chronicles says Sony has sold 1 million PS5s in Japan faster than the PS4. That puts it ahead of the PS4, but behind the PS3. I think for the shortages, though, you'd be hard pressed to say that isn't fairly amazing.
Verifying access.
Let's see.
Begin.
Nothing shall alter the. Do not sully this great.
Still got far to go.
There we go. I don't think there's really really much more to say there, though. Video Game Chronicles says Xbox One controllers are getting Series XS features like low latency. The Elite Series 2 and adaptive controls will also be getting the new update. Low latency is one thing. Can we turn off the dumb LED? And see, this is an Elite controller, and frankly, it does not feel too different from the core controller I just bought. There is 3 profile LEDs here. This sunken in 8-way D-pad, which is really, at least on the core controller, still a 4-way D-pad, so pushing up in this corner does not magically send an 8-way signal to Binding of Isaac Rebirth in particular. So yeah, it's probably fine. The buttons and the control sticks and everything feel about the same. There's more textured grip here, and there's flappy paddles. That's not on the core controller. They also have black buttons instead of colored buttons, which I think the next generation of controllers will just have all black on gray instead of doing multiple colors. But let's see. Add features to Xbox One controllers with Bluetooth support, Elite wireless controllers, Series 2 and Xbox Adaptive controllers. It'll add dynamic latency input, which maybe that only works on the Series X and S and doesn't actually work on PC. That is a possibility.
I won't lose next time.
Let's see.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
Bluetooth Low Energy.
Won't be long now.
Well, allows for better compatibility with non-Xbox devices and makes it easier for players to pair their controllers with something that isn't an Xbox One or Series. Bluetooth Low Energy also is a later standard of Bluetooth. Yeah, Bluetooth LE is basically Bluetooth 2.0, and it replaces some of the bad first generation connection standards. That being said, Bluetooth has always been kind of a terrible collection of standards, and a bunch of vulnerabilities were just announced a few days ago around Bluetooth LE.
I never get a chance to speak.
Verifying access.
What this really is showing is that there is room in its flash chip
I surrender.
Back to the hideout.
for these controllers that they could put all this new code in, and that it could be updated. Let's see. Players will be able to play wirelessly with their controllers on Windows 10 PCs, iOS 15, and Android devices that support Bluetooth Low Energy. So, yeah, theoretically, I could plug in a Bluetooth dongle into my computer and play wirelessly. I don't see a reason to do that. Like, I like the idea of just never putting batteries in my controller just to stop the battery acid from someday potentially leaking out. I had a remote where that recently happened, and that was crazy. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does occasionally happen. And the controller will remember one Xbox device, one Bluetooth device, and by double tapping the pair button, the players can quickly switch between them, which that is something you definitely need. That's something you also need in like headphones, Bluetooth headphones, is you need it to be able to connect into at least two devices so you can quickly switch between them.
I bring unto you
I'll chill you to the bone.
But ironically, the LED still can't be turned off, which it must be physically wired in the regular controllers. Whatever, I put black tape over it, so that solves that problem. I will say that the new Core, Xbox Core controller that I have definitely had a different feel when I first looked at it and felt it, as far as the triggers and the bumps and everything. But I have not noticed any difference really in playing it. Maybe I'm just not that sensitive to controller setups, but it was a very easy transition from one to the other, which is what you want. So there's really no complaining there. It is a little strange here that you don't have a green version of this, and you still have just the black buttons here in this Halo Infinite version of the controller. And maybe this is a battery indicator instead of a profile indicator. I think it's a profile indicator. Also, the share button seems still not to be getting any kind of update to do anything at all on Windows, which again just seems weird. Weird you wouldn't have your software do something, even if it just launched a web page to or press the print screen button. That would be about the best thing it could do. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says the latest AEW game footage shows its No Mercy influence, which there's quite a lot of trailers today, like with the PlayStation event, which was frankly dull from what I got. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it, but yeah, this looks like a real wrestling game. It looks alright, but it doesn't look amazingly good. I think that is something that is going to kind of haunt any wrestling game, is that the WWE games have tried to make their games look so hyper realistic and failed kind of miserably, and yet that is really what people want.
Hostile life form detected.
That it's close to impossible to really satisfy the audience that it's trying to target.
I am such a genius.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of sports games, is that they're trying constantly to be this hyper realistic experience, and it just won't really work. It probably would be smarter if they went for more of a Borderlands style cartoony appearance. Yeah, if you told me a Borderlands wrestling game was coming out, I would believe you, certainly. That would make a lot of sense to bring out Salvador, for instance, and give him a wrestling game that is not gun shooting, first person shooting.
Enemy identified.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
But yeah, and AEW is in development. There's really nothing more to say about that. See, and to get back to the PlayStation event, there was that person that came out and said people would lose their effing minds, and none of the announcements were really surprising. So I have no idea what I have no idea what people are what that person was thinking, because yeah, it's very basic. Like, you could have predicted announcements. I hardly, maybe I'm a little bit anti-Sony. I'll admit I probably am at this point, because of how badly they've run their business and just failed to be good competition. But yeah, do this, do this, and then you do this,
And the rise.
and then you put that on that.
It was a lie.
Farewell, dragon.
Then in the turn, yeah.
I bestow upon you my
Like,
lightning.
there's literally only one game I want to even talk about when we get to the news, as far as the setup here is. Oh, I guess Komatsu's RSS feed hasn't been updated because they changed their name. I'll have to address that. That certainly explains it. I've been looking at the desktop ticker, and I'm like, why is this news so old that they're talking about? That's because they changed their website. Okay. Let's see. If I hit this, let's do this, and then evolve this. So we can hit that. Play that. And then I don't even know if it really is worth killing this, but we'll do it anyways. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle. A new Twisted Metal game is in development to coincide with the TV series, it's claimed. Jonas claims a new series entry is in the works, corroborating Video Game Chronicle's own sources. Is that really corroborating, though? Like, to corroborate your sources is a very specific process that I suspect most mainstream video game journalists don't know how to do, and I'm not going to pretend like I really know how to do it properly. But it definitely involves naming the person who is saying this to make sure it's not just the same person saying it to multiple people. And that at a certain point, to corroborate sources is divulging sources. Which you have to be careful about that too.
Oh, my beloved Nava. What fine threads you have. Truth and lies. This'll be over quick.
Guess we'll hit that.
It was a lie.
And then I guess I should have probably done something different there, but whatever. Let's see if this works.
Forget it. I'm done.
It is very questionable what a new Twisted Metal game would feel like and how it would play. Twisted Metal, in a lot of ways, as a car combat game, has probably been replaced with things like Rocket League and just more general public friendly concepts, and is a artifact of the past that I don't know will just automatically transfer to modern gameplay.
Power of mortality.
Moving on, UK school pupils will soon be taught how to run their own Mario Kart tournaments, which I guess that's the teachers and the assistants. Digital Schoolhouse Careers experience is mapped out to the national curriculum. And they're going to put together esports tournaments, which at a certain point, I guess there is a... is this just a... What is this video? Why is it so vertical like this? On your phone. See, that's just an ad for World Tour on cell phones. Yeah, teachers should know how to do this. I think Nintendo may have a real problem with people playing their games in school and having tournaments. Nintendo has had real problems with fan tournaments in general and being extremely controlling and trying to use copyright quite a bit. Schools tend to be pretty much immune from any copyright claims. Anyways, they can show movies, they can read books, they can play games, they can basically run software. Schools maybe get slightly slapped on the wrist if they pirate software a ton, but that's about it.
This one's for my family.
At least that's how it is in the United States, and I imagine UK is not going to be too far away from that same perspective. I don't know what is super educational around doing a Mario Kart tournament, but whatever. It's like going outside has stopped at this point with the pandemic being an option for kids, so keeping them entertained and out of just complete and total doldrum is going to be the name of the game. I think there probably is a better focus to go closer towards a Steam focus instead of just having esports. The idea of promoting esports as a legitimate career path, I think, is still fairly ridiculous and should be discouraged. Because, yeah, that's just not going to happen for most kids. I think programming a lot more instead of just sticking kids in front of video games should be taught. I think electronics, soldering, making, actually building things, doing something that isn't just being programmed in such a way to let you win, is a good idea. Like, video games are designed to make you win. You're supposed to have a very high win ratio. Programming, you're making something from scratch. You can fail easily. You can get frustrated. You can give up. You can realize your idea was stupid from the beginning. You can just be too dumb and not educated enough and not logical thinking enough to program things. There's been plenty of people I've seen that will say they can't do technology at all, and most of those people I think haven't ever tried. But there is also some people that I've known that have just like not mentally capable.
All of you.
So yeah, really doing something new. And when you're teaching programming and science in schools, you're still giving them lesson plans that are designed to let people really succeed. That's not the main issue. The main issue is, though, you're learning something that will actually be useful in the future, whereas video games are not going to be useful in the future. Imagine, just go back a previous generation, imagine all the kids that were listening to records and CDs if they thought they were going to all become radio hosts or DJs or some kind of form of competitive, like, I don't even know what it would be. It would have to be some kind of weird form of competitive music listener. I guess music critics? Like, that didn't happen. There's no competitive criticism amongst music. We kind of have competitive and criticism in video games. That's what I'm doing, certainly, but also what I'm doing is not really making any money. I don't even have to say really, it is not making any money, so it is a hobby for the love of the game more than it is a true career. Yeah, esports are going to be exactly the same like that. You're not going to have lots of people playing esports. And I get the idea, though, maybe, I mean, if you're getting rid of tackle football in favor of Mario Kart tournaments, because Mario Kart tournaments are safer and more popular, I guess that's a step in the right direction. And so, and in all fairness, tackle football is really not education either. And there is a big difference between physical education and just developing healthy, active lifestyles, and then pushing yourself to play a specific sport. So maybe that's where you could make some replacements.
All of you.
Let's see. Let's go ahead and fuse once there. Okay. I think we've got this. You evolve this one. And you hit that one. And you hit that one.
I am such a genius.
We can start doing some real damage. Next we have a Video Games Chronicle. Lego and Nintendo's has a $170 question block containing mini Mario 64 worlds. So we had seen this in Shadow teased, and now the trailer shows you it. It's pretty boring. It's micro scale Mario and Princess. It flips up. You have the snow area, you have the castle area, you have Bomb Bomb, the first world, and then you have that lava world. And see, here's what Mario is, here's what the princess looks like. There's the little camera. it folding up and then swinging away into a question mark block is kind of interesting as far as movement, but the actual gameplay and display of it really isn't, in my mind, the best. So I'm not heavily impressed by it by any means, and $170 doesn't really seem like as much as it really should be.
Everything was a lie.
Accept harmony. If I were
Thy little canary.
I didn't play as well as I'd like. It is weird that they're doing this and kind of getting away from the electric Mario sets where there was supposed to be a whole different game there. I don't think kids really embraced the Mario sets where you build your own sets and do this. Compared to the TV and Lego NES set, which was full of nostalgia, this is more of an abstract idea. It kind of feels like a device that you would build something like this, and then 10 years from now we're going to see a lot of edgy teenagers hiding their weed inside of the Mario Lego coin. Closed up, it looks fine on the shelf, but it is just a coin block, which is basically just a block. I haven't been particularly focused either in doing Lego, so my fandom of Lego has kind of gone stagnant. I've been just incredibly busy with other things and not gotten around to it. So yeah, you might consider it, but you also might consider that the other Nintendo stuff is seemingly going off sale, and being marked as retiring soon, which it is, which means that they're making a shift there. And I haven't seen any of the Nintendo stuff be as successful as you may have thought it would have been. I wouldn't be surprised if there literally is just a lot of kids that like Lego and a lot of kids that like Nintendo, and not so many characters that like Lego and Nintendo. I could see parents focusing on having their kids do Legos instead of playing Nintendo games or video games, and vice versa. I could see a lot of gamer parents pushing their kids into games and digital forms of media. It saves you definitely on square footage to push kids into digital media, but there is also some benefit for actually physically owning something and having that tactical feedback of actually touching something. Moving on, we need to hurry up. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands release date has been confirmed. It'll be in March next year. Should be a space there. This was, I believe, one of the trailers put out during the PlayStation Direct, even though it's not a PlayStation exclusive. Either that or it just came out as a trailer. It kind of feels like what they're doing is they're trying to wrap up announcements. Like they really are starting to a point where this is the old trailer. Yeah, it feels like the game industry in general is just trying to wrap up announcements because they don't want to be making announcements into October. Video Game Chronicles, here's a new look at PS5's best looking open world game, quote. This was a prize, I guess it was given, Forspoken. Which, Forspoken is this thing where there's this girl in the regular world, and then she gets shot through a portal, and then she's kind of in a Final Fantasy world, and I think at some point there was an idea that this was going to just be a regular girl transported to a Final Fantasy world, but then they've just put it into its own world. She has this arm bracelet that gives her magical powers and talks to her. So it's an isekai video game, basically. At the looks of it, it may be much closer to something like, oh, what was that Parasite game where you were a parasite running around, almost like Venom, attacking people and eating them, absorbing their DNA and making yourself look like them. Yeah, it kind of feels like you may have more magical and more superhero moves than just shooting bows and arrows or shooting guns. I think it is still probably early days as far as whether or not Forspoken could be a new breakout hit in a fairly busy field of Final Fantasy style games. If it is incredibly grindy like a Final Fantasy game, then you're gonna have some problems. And so that there is definitely an argument to make it short and sweet and not go for a 200-hour experience. Also, Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy are being remastered for the PS5 and PC, which is great, but if they get remastered, Uncharted 4 specifically, and it comes to PC and it's not the Epic Game Store exclusive, which maybe it is, you're still in a weird position where can you really start at Uncharted 4 A Thief's End, the last game in a quadrilogy? Or are you going to need to be able to play the other games on PC? So, yeah. I think the DLC Lost Legacy pretty much doesn't even focus around Nathan Drake. So, yeah. Days Gone was made by Naughty Dog also, so maybe they'll get around to releasing the other Uncharted games. That being said, I really would have to question whether there's a lot of reason to even play Uncharted. While it had some relevancy, I don't know how much of its relevancy doesn't really disappear once it stops being one of the few exclusives to the PlayStation that was really good during that time. I'm sure people with nostalgia for it will have more reason to want to play it again on PC, but even then it's still just a Tomb Raider clone, and I've struggled to even play the final Tomb Raider game, so the idea of playing Uncharted as a Tomb Raider clone is asking quite a lot. Oops. Well, I played poorly there.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Ghostwire Tokyo gets a new trailer, but no release date yet. So, more teasing for a game that might be something, but you kind of, like all games, you have to kind of just wait until it comes out. Interesting. So, these are straight up like weird, creepy ghosts, on more Japanese style ghosts, in a Tokyo environment. At a certain point, I guess the question will come down to how much of this really is that different from just a game where you're beating up people, like a Yakuza game. Is this supposed to be a horror game, or is this supposed to be an action game? It's from the Resident Evil creator, Shinji Mikami's Tango Gameworks, which also worked on some of the Evil Within, but in all fairness, even the Evil Within kind of disappointed. So, Evil Within 2 also went in a weird direction and wasn't even made by, I think, the same person who made Evil Within 1, so...
Needs an afterlife plan.
Yeah. A thing like Ghostwire Tokyo, in particular, needs reviews before you can even begin to consider it.
You complete me.
Wind, grant them courage.
Video Game Chronicles says that it's claimed that the Xbox Series XS can use standard SSDs in the expansion slot. It's claimed. Is this what a standard SSD is considered now? Though a M2 key B or key K adapter to a PCI Express or NVMe connection, because like there's a lot of different things that look like this and different variants, and speed is definitely a thing. Undoubtedly, yes, you could have made an adapter from the proprietary connector to an M2 connector, but will the speed and the throughput and everything really guarantee the same experience, or are you setting yourself up for failure? With such high speeds, is a trace of the connections here going through even more wire and even more connection, adding that extra distance, is that going to significantly or noticeably affect things? I wouldn't be surprised if they do at some point just allow for hackers to hack their Xboxes and put their own memory NVMEs in it. But for the vast majority of people, I would not recommend trying to hack something in. It's probably not even going to save you a lot of money, even though the discs are slightly overpriced. When you're gonna, in cases where people look at it and think they'll save a lot of money, what they'll really be doing is putting in such an inferior quality product that they will be trading off performance to the point where they shouldn't have put in an expansion drive at all. Like, the real way to save money on the Xbox Series X and S if you need storage is just to plug in a USB hard drive, which are really cheap, and then transfer over a few games that you're not playing at the moment. You can't play off the hard drive, but that does then guarantee you the best experience. Alright. Let's see.
Such a lovely couple. Blow on, dear wind.
Moving on, new tests in direct opposition to the previous speculation suggest that the revised PS5 model actually runs cooler. A YouTuber analysis has previously criticized the new model for shrinking its heatsink, but here we have several points on the thermal camera that are being marked at, I assume, degrees Celsius, and yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. You shouldn't have put them right next to each other. They should have been isolated in their own environments, like at least a airflow box in between the two to block things, but also you can't really see the back part of this. Also, you can certainly be confused by the idea that seeing heat is a bad thing. It could be overheating internally, and then the components are just not transferring the heat. So if the heat is staying near the CPU and then the case looks completely cold, that is actually the bad thing. Seeing the red here shows you, yes, this is venting out the heat and getting it as far away as possible. I would have to assume that this is the new model because this one looks like it's got more heat happening to it. And yeah, normally you don't use thermal cameras, you use charts like this, so yeah, you're seeing an 11 degree Celsius difference there for the CPU. You're seeing a 8 degree increase on the memory, a 2 degree on the VRAM, and you're seeing a 3 degree increase on the exhaust, which the CPU is cooler, but pretty much everything else is running warmer.
Power of mortality.
So it seems like they did some trade-offs more than they tried to fix things. And honestly, I think that's specifically going to just be that could be from one device to another, very different. And yeah, I would definitely have put this in a cardboard box around each one, just 2 identical cardboard boxes, or put each machine separately and record the footage separately. That being said, that could affect the ambient air conditions, could affect that, but at least I'd have a wall in between these two, so one isn't exhausting heat on the other. If anything, while this person is probably really trying to do something interesting with their videos, I can't help but they aren't just they aren't just chasing a fad like so many other YouTubers, and the proof is really in the pudding. If it doesn't matter that the new version of the PS5 runs a little hotter but still performs exactly the same, then it just doesn't matter. Unless you're just trying to lower your electricity bill and your cooling bill, then maybe it matters. But that does seem kind of just pointless fact vectors. And certainly you can do that. You can get a whole bunch of facts and they can turn out to all just be kind of useless facts if you're not careful. So you want to address that as much as possible and give out relevant facts. The search for relevancy is always the name of the game. Everything you say, everything you do, in a world of abundance as the digital world is, relevancy takes top priority. Arguably, a lot of my content, if not all my content on my own YouTube channel, fails to find relevancy for most people, and that's why it fails to get a lot of views. Let's see. Can we fuse that with that? I guess we can. Moving on, Video Game Chronicle says the exhausted, quote-unquote, God of War director reveals he's not returning to Ragnarok. The series veteran Eric Williams will take over the directing role for the sequel. Which one is which? I mean, this guy looks exhausted and he's not wearing a PlayStation shirt, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's close to leaving the company. Of course, somebody saying they're exhausted and not working on a sequel in this age of like cancellation and cancel culture may indicate that they found something in his history and they're trying to silently move him out of a position of notoriety. That is pure speculation on my part, completely baseless, but I would also be totally willing to believe that he is just actually exhausted from the grueling schedule it takes to make games. Honestly though, I assume this is the exhausted guy. This is a problem. You should like Corey Barlog, you should label these or not put pictures with two people on it. It would have been easy enough to crop out this guy and crop out this guy and then have two pictures. It probably takes more work if they made this picture. Takes more work to put in two pictures into one than it would just to have two pictures in general. Unless they just have some kind of incredibly strict style guide at Video Games Chronicle where they can literally only have one picture at the top and then one video, and that's it. And that seems ridiculous to be limited that much. We still have yet to see a God of War reboot game on PC, I believe. So it is still going to be an exclusive. Again, Ragnarok getting an announced statement and then getting some hype-killing news is hardly something that's going to have people losing their minds. So once again, I don't know what they thought was going to impress people so much at this PlayStation Direct. And I won't make a claim that the PlayStation Direct shouldn't have happened, but there really is just not enough there to call it anything than a standard experience. It is interesting to probably notice that there isn't a tit for tat happening per se. There isn't a Nintendo Direct and a PlayStation Direct and a Microsoft Direct all happening around the same 3-week period. It's just happening when somebody has something to say and thinks they can make a presentation. I imagine maybe in the future we will see more direct tit for tats where Nintendo has a Nintendo Direct, the next week PlayStation puts out some sort of announcement to try and compete with that, and then Microsoft puts out some kind of presentation to compete with that.
I am such a genius.
Let's see.
Getting away.
Begin. To die or not to die.
Son of a gun, ain't you?
Let's see. Video Game Chronicle says Nintendo Switch could reportedly receive a price cut in Europe next week. maybe a 50-pound reduction, which would be 270 pounds, which I don't know what the comparison is of pounds to US dollars. Is right now they're selling for about 330 pounds. The pound, I think, has kind of lost a lot of its value due to Brexit and just its economy. So, yeah, the comparison is almost 1-to-1, I think, at this point, where it used to be 1.5 times a dollar.
As the curtain falls.
Let's see. Video Game Chronicle says Insomniac Spider-Man 2 cast the Candyman, or the actor Tony Todd, who played Candyman, as Venom. I watched, for no good reason, the Venom movie, which was awful. It just really failed to establish the characters at all. So you've got a probably fairly aging actor who's going to do voice acting in a video game, which I imagine we'll see a lot more of that, where you just have fairly old actors starting to do voice acting because they can't really show their face. There is a Candyman reboot, I believe, that either happened or is about to happen, where it's like, I think, a woman, so then it's Candy Woman, I guess, at that point. So I could see maybe some reason why that would get a little bit more press. This might very well be a case where Sony Motion Pictures forced a Sony movie to get kind of subtly promoted by hiring the right cast person. This might be nepotism more than anything else. I think it's been a long time since I've watched Candyman, so I don't know if his voice acting is going to work particularly well for Venom. Honestly, Venom as a character has really failed to be established as much of a character anyways. So yeah, they're gonna have to put some work into it. Here's the trailer for Spider-Man 2, and you have Miles Morales and Spider-Man seemingly fighting together. And I kind of would have to assume that at some point Venom takes over Peter Parker, and the significant portion of the game is you playing as Miles Morales fighting Venom, controlling Peter Parker. That would certainly make a lot of sense. It also kind of drastically would change the events of the Venom saga and retcon things, but whatever. That's what comic books do all the time.
Shutting down.
But yeah, it would be slightly weird for Miles Morales to start being the hero and solving, doing things that happen different ways, and just retelling the Peter Parker story, but retelling it in a way in which Peter Parker is always the incompetent sidekick and Miles Morales is the hero. Honestly, there is also a case where like Miles Morales should just go off and have his own enemies and his own fights and battles, and not just end up fighting Venom. You kind of have to have Venom. You kind of have to have a Doc Ock. You don't really have to have too many other people from the Spider-Man universe. You don't have to get all of the Sinister Six, for instance, from the Spider-Man universe and have them fight Miles Morales, which I think there's already a direct-to-DVD movie in which Miles Morales does fight the Sinister Six, but You don't have to really bring back Sandman. You don't really have to bring back clones or Man Spider or Craven the Hunter, things like that. You definitely don't have to bring in Mephisto and have Peter Parker sell his wedding, the history of his wedding and his to Mary Jane. You don't have to bring Mary Jane back into it at all. Moving on, back to video games. Platinum says, according to Video Games Chronicles, that it is, quote, proud of Bayonetta 3 and, quote, wants to show it, but it's, quote, not our decision what to say and when. I guess that's because Nintendo is the publisher and putting a tight control on it. I don't think it would be fair to say Nintendo has ever intentionally just held on to a product and never released it to kill it. But they do seem like they have real problems scheduling
What winds whisked me.
promotions and announcements because they're desperately trying to not cannibalize their own announcements with the latest Metroid game, and that is,
100%
I think,
free and 0%
confusing the issue quite a bit.
There's a copy of the game.
Maybe this time I can fade completely.
Life form detected.
Okay, that should work well. They need to be very careful, though, I'll say, about getting Bayonetta 3 out there. Because if they don't release Bayonetta 3 in the next year and a half or so, there is going to be another game that comes out that is going to steal a lot of the thunder from Bayonetta 3. There's also just weirdness in general with Bayonetta 3 possibly being very delayed as far as the PC version, if a PC version ever comes out. I don't know if Bayonetta 2 even came out on PC. If it did, I've failed miserably to actually play it,
This'll be over.
which I would think I would have wanted to do that. I guess it is also a case that
Terminating hostile
the Castlevania
Watch as I wind
clone has a lot of that style of Bayonetta too. So, and that has already come out. What am I trying to... I forgot the name of it though. From the creator of Castlevania, under a new title and under a new name. We already talked about this, but LEGO is marking some of the Super Mario products as retiring soon, so yeah. I don't think this ever worked very well. But I will also say, at least this is closer to a minifig size, which I think is right. These are more closer to the blockhead size, and I think in general LEGO has finally gotten the message that LEGO blockheads as a product series sucked. There really is no reason why this is a square cube instead of a round Mario head. Like, this being square kind of makes sense, but then when you look at like this guy, he's not really that square. This guy's not that square. This guy being that square just is ridiculous. And ideally, I think that is what we'll see happen is they'll cancel and slowly phase out all of the Mario first generation products, and then they will introduce a second generation product that is more just minifigs. But at the moment, they're really going in circles in a funny way, because they've gone from blockhead scale, which is too big, to micro scale, which is too small in the other set. And the NES Lego set that came with the TV set and the NES, that came with a custom piece of Mario that was a flat pixely Mario piece that looked perfectly fine. And the screen on the TV rotated around, and that was a fairly interesting way to depict World 1-1 in Lego form. And that was kind of flat micro scaley, but it was still fairly nice. Moving on, we're now up to the Gematsu articles. Rift Breakers for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC launches October 14th. I don't know if there's a video here to even see what Rift Breakers is. It looks like it's a Diablo-esque top-down twin-stick shooter with mechs. Which, there might be something there, or it might just be too many hordes of animals and monsters attacking you, and it might just be a little too intense for the item for the gameplay. One thing specifically about Diablo was the fact that there was items and fantasy elements to it, and once you get away from the fantasy elements and the item collection gameplay mechanic, the game itself gets a little too action focused, even though Diablo was 100% action and you're just left clicking the mouse, right clicking the mouse all the time. You really needed those breaks where you went into the storefront and cleaned out your inventory. Let's see, we already talked about this. PlayStation 5 has topped 1 million in units sold. Let's see. Attack on Titan Brave Order has been announced for iOS and Android. It's a cooperative RPG from Enish. E-N-I-S-H. Never heard of that company. There's nothing more to say there. Attack on Titan, kind of late to the party, though. Eden Zero Project Galaxy for iOS and Android. Pre-registration is now available. Eden Zero is a slightly newer anime compared to Attack on Titan, but I haven't seen a lot of interest around it as an anime, for as much as I'm paying attention to the anime fan set.
All of you. A spin and a twirl and out. There's our puppet again. Watch as I wind and wind.
Yes, I could have evolved and done some more damage. Let's see, Gematsu says, Square Enix announces Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars, a tabletop RPG built on cards from Yoko Taro, featuring an enchanting story completely depicted by cards. Problem with a real-world card game certainly is that there's going to just be that immediate desire to turn that into a digital card game for players like me. And since they're probably not doing that, this is probably not so much a collectible card game as just a deck building card game where you have all the cards to start with. You pay $60 to $100, you get all the cards in real world fashion. This is probably a great way in which you take a creative director who worked on Drakengard and Nier, and an executive producer who worked on Nier, and a music director who worked on Nier. I don't know where the music would come in there, and a character designer who worked on the Drakengard series. you take these 4 employees that you would have either had to sideline or give busy work to, and instead you give them a really small project. I guess this is going to be a digital card game. I could definitely see artists also, in particular, just having nothing to do after the initial art has been set up. And I could definitely see a case where people would give them just busy work, or they would spend a lot of time just making art and selling signed art frames, or making limited edition art stuff for limited edition packaging. Speaking of the art, this looks fine, but it doesn't look particularly interesting. It looks fairly dull. And if this was supposed to be somewhere in line with the Nier series, I'm not really seeing it anyways. So, seems like they've gone with a different art style anyways. Game Master has Alan Wake remastered for screenshots, which I guess you can check out if you're interested in that. I couldn't imagine for a second that I'd actually play Alan Wake remastered. I didn't like Alan Wake, so why would I? Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania has the Sega Legends pack, which is apparently going to be a Dreamcast on a ball, on top of a Game Gear, and is that a Master System, I guess? Yeah, that probably is a Master System. Not to be that was later rebranded as the Sega Genesis and sold in the United States as the Sega Genesis. Football Manager 2022 has been announced for Xbox Series, Xbox One, Switch, PC, iOS, and Android. So that's probably a manager game and probably not that interesting. Hot Wheels Unleashed has a customization trailer, which having the ability to customize is great, but it's kind of hard to have any enthusiasm for this Hot Wheels game when we know it's going to be full of a lot of DLC for our kids' game. A lot of skins around different brands. And once again, this is kind of one of those games where you're going to have to find a review before you can really be certain that it's something worth playing. I could play Forest Craft instead of Polo Craft if I wanted to, but we'll just stick with Polo Craft. Komatsu has a Crash Bandicoot 25th anniversary celebration video, which seems to me like it's just people sitting talking on a screen. Seems like this is once again a case of people not wearing masks and sitting too close to each other. And yeah, they're probably vaccinated, but I think just for the show of it, they should start with masks. They should be on different screens, or very far away. There have been definitely cases where they have had Crash Bandicoot in a big suit. Here we go. This guy. For the commercials, let's see. You get this guy, and either don't put a person in there and just have a dummy stand there in this suit, or you have something like this in between them, and then you can fill the visual gap fairly easily and do a funny thematic way of keeping them further apart. Let's see. Moving on, we have the Internal Cylinder launching September 30th. Apparently it's PC, PS4, and Xbox. You control a herd of adorable creatures and explore a strange alien world. This really does not look adorable to me, but to each their own, I suppose. Let's see if we can find a video of this, because that looks very surreal. And while I do like surreal, it can go wonky. So, Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of alien life forms that look alien. I think adorable is not a descriptive word to use here. It's, I think you're much better off describing this as of exotic or alien creatures. Alien is probably the easiest phrase to use. This looks a lot like a new attempt on something like Spore. Really. Where you just are evolving and growing weird creatures. In a lot of ways, if you were to make a new Pokemon game and a Monster Hunter game, and you were trying to make new monsters, you could easily miss the mark and make a game like the Eternal Cylinder. I don't even get the phrase Eternal Cylinder. There's a phrase, the Eternal Engine, or the Eternal Cycle, but a cylinder? Specifically? That's weird. Moving on, A Juggler's Tale launches September 29th. It's a 3D side-scrolling adventure game starring a string puppet. Apparently it's coming out for basically everything, except for cell phones. Let's see if we can check out what this looks like. So, you've just got a lot of string puppet people. It feels like at a certain point it would be easy just to flip a switch and turn off all the strings. And I think you would be better off doing that. Like, I find it incredibly visually distracting to see these strings all over the place. But I guess the strings are going to play a actual role in the gameplay. So I don't think you're going to be able to turn it off. So maybe there's something interesting around that gameplay, but I could also see it being fairly dull.
Hold still.
That's once again a game that needs a review. Lost Judgment demo is now available for PS5 and PS4 in Japan, if that's interesting. Neo series shipments digital sales have topped 6 million, which that is quite a large amount. Neo is a game that I think I've kind of completely forgotten about as a series, and I guess it's 2 games now. They're only on the Epic Games Store, and that's going to be the problem, certainly for several games, is if they stay Epic Game exclusives, I'll just forget about them enough to the point where they aren't even going to be worth talking about when and if they ever come to Steam.
Destroying target.
Hold still.
Should have evolved this, I guess, before I attacked. Gamatsu says a game called Critadel launches October 13th. You run, jump, and blast. This is interesting looking as far as the art, but I don't know if that means anything. Critadel, I assume being half Citadel, half critical hit in its phrase. Looks like a very visually busy platforming shooter with what seems to be probably more precision platforming and frustration platforming than I probably would want. But I definitely would give a game like that a chance and see what the reviews say. all this, I guess.
The design fault lies with you.
And then hit this. And then hit this.
What to do, please?
This'll be over quick.
And hit that.
I am such a genius. Hold still.
Let's see. We already talked about this. There's a rumor the new Twisted Metal game is in development. The PlayStation Showcase happened. We don't really need to say anything like that. Sony Interactive Entertainment and Aspire Media has announced Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake for the PS5 and PC. Maybe this was the thing that was supposed to make people lose their minds. Of all the announcements, this would be the biggest one. There is immediately some pushback on more of the right-wing conservative YouTube that I keep an eye on. As far as the person supposedly in charge of Knights of the Old Republic remake didn't like the movies of Star Wars, which, in all fairness, I would not really trust somebody who said they did like all of the Star Wars movies at this point. But yeah, there's some concern and distrust around that.
This'll be over quick.
There is some concern and distrust around the new main character being more of a female woke character, which honestly sometimes these reactions are just too hot of hot takes, and people need to chill and actually get some information instead of just immediately assuming the worst. As someone who hasn't played Knights of the Old Republic, maybe I spotlighted it and then immediately forgot about it. I really don't have any major enthusiasm for it. I don't even know what kind of game it is. I think it's one of the first-person shooter games, but it might also be more of one of the MOBA style games. You kind of had to assume this was going to happen anyways, because we knew Disney is licensing a ton of stuff out. I don't even know which character that's supposed to be. Seeing that's how little of a fan I am of Star Wars. They really don't have anything other than that teaser trailer. Yeah. So yeah. It really, for me in particular, just feels like a wait and see scenario. You definitely should just wait and see with Knights of the Old Republic. Remember, there's been fairly recently quite a lot of canceled projects around Star Wars 2. So the Floor 1313, for instance, this Knights of the Old Republic remake may very well be using a lot of the concepts and content from Floor 1313. And 1313 is definitely the more interesting Star Wars game because it was going in a new direction. And they've kind of forgotten about the one that did come out that was going in a new direction. And you have to remind yourself about Battlefront still being fairly terrible and laden with microtransactions. So, yeah. Approach with caution. So, Project Eve has been confirmed for the PS5 and has a gameplay trailer. Now, this game is the game I was talking about that may very well suck the oxygen out of the room for Bayonetta 3. if it actually is a game that works and plays. It is from Shift Up, which is the creators of my favorite cell phone game, Destiny Child, which that game is still great, even though it is lewd anime girls, and this is more of a realistic 3D models, whereas Destiny Child is live 2D flat anime, more colorful characters. One of the things I would say that concerns me more than anything about Shift Up having this game come out is they may at some point lose focus on Destiny Child, and I just hope that they wrap up the story fairly well. So yeah, she has this long black flowing hair. There's this big action scene. I think a lot more of this is going to be cutscenes and QuickTime events than you realize. There's this big giant monster she's fighting, and it throws her out of this space station into the air where she seemingly can breathe just fine in space, and she gets so far away from it that she then looks back, and there's this giant collection of eyes that has taken over nearly all of the space station. And then that brings it crashing down to Earth, I assume, and then at a certain point you're running around this desolated, destroyed version of Earth that seems almost like it's a Russian version of Earth more than anything. And I think that is where the real gameplay is going to happen, is you're going to be going through a lot of different areas, like Bayonetta areas. In the cutscene, she's doing this prayer to some character. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it is you're going to be going through subways and things and fighting in fight sections. More like this hack and slash effect. Like, her outfit is a little weird, but not terrible. And yeah, you're going to be fighting these goo monsters that bring back corpses back to life. Oops. But yeah, there will be some interesting high action, like kill camera shots, I imagine, but the vast majority of your action will be hack and slash. But it definitely gets down to the question as far as, would this really replace Bayonetta? Not in most people's hearts, but if Bayonetta 3 just never comes out, or if it's not on PC, you play this. We had seen trailers of this game before with these like grotesque chainsaw-headed characters, and so there's a lot more content in this trailer. There is still a real chance, though, that this is just not actually going to be much of a game, and a 5 to 10 hour experience. And she's wearing this like skimpy bodysuit, latex bodysuit. Here's an effect where you're running around and skating in a tunnel, and I imagine that will be more of a QuickTime event than anything. The story is going to be fairly important here, because of the story. It doesn't have to really be as good as it just has to be interesting. But if the story does turn out to be fairly dull, I could see a lot of people not going with it. But definitely some of these monsters feel a lot like the weird monsters in Bayonetta 1. If you hadn't seen Bayonetta 1 and you see some of those angels. And then the last tease here shows her someone putting on a completely different outfit, which maybe that's the bad guy. Shift Up being a Korean company, I think they potentially, if they can get the funding and if they can maintain running 2 or 3 games at the same time, could become a real competitor to something like, oh, Konami in Japan. I think South Korea would love to see that happen. But then I could also see Tencent just trying to swoop in and buy them, and I don't think that South Korea would let that happen. Yeah, and it would be a double-edged sword. Like, on one hand, Sony of Japan could be funding Shift Up, and that'd be a good thing. On the other hand, this Project Eve is definitely closer to one of those games that I think Sony of California really would not would really not know, or really not like. So moving on, we have Tiny Tina's Wonderland launching March 25th, 2022. We had already talked about that. Forspoken launching in spring of 2022 with a story trailer. We already talked about that. Alan Wake Remastered launching October 5th. I don't know if we had gotten the date before. Ghostwire Tokyo launching in spring of 2022. And the Hanya trailer now being available. Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online for PS5 and Xbox Series have been delayed to March of 2022, and they are claiming that will not affect their sales, which that is questionable.
I can't move.
Best of luck to you.
Let's see. Uncharted Lost Legacy of Thieves collection announced for PS5 and PC. Legacy of Thieves would be Uncharted 4 and the DLC, Uncharted Lost Legacy, which I think was a standalone DLC. Suppose it's worth looking at just what the visuals look like in the remaster. Doesn't look terrible. I feel like the Lost Legacy in particular, having just like 2 female lead protagonists, does just get back to making a Tomb Raider game. The next step I think Uncharted would have to take is that you would have to introduce a male and female, like brother and sister type partnership, or boyfriend girlfriend type partnership, where you can play as either character and then the other character is assumed to come along. Let's see. Students.
All of you.
Hit that one.
Okay.
Do you have anything else we can do? Let's see. Sony Interactive Entertainment and Insomniac Games announced Marvel's Wolverine for PlayStation 5. From what I can guess from this announcement teaser, and from what I've heard, is this is supposed to be a Wolverine from the Spider-Man video game. So, might be slightly different. Feels like it's probably going to be a little bit more Old Man Logan than a early edition of a younger version of Wolverine with the X-Men or anything like that. And maybe Wolverine does work better as an Old Man Logan than he does as just an X-Men. See, Sony Interactive and Insomniac announced Marvel's Spider-Man 2 for PS5, due out in 2023. You know, there's something I think that's weird here in the way this is depicted. I've never thought of Spider-Man really having pectorals. You could see through the suit, and this feels weird. It feels kind of like he just has old man boobs, whereas the flat chest that is probably getting padded out due to padding in the suit makes a lot more sense for Miles Morales. This feels really weird, like to a point where I almost wonder, is this a female in the Spider-Man suit? And it's not even Peter Parker. That would be weird.
Tell me what to do, please.
But I bet there is a female Spider-Woman in some alternate universe in the Marvel comic book mythology. Well, we can't do anything else, I guess.
Completing termination sequence.
Let's see, God of War Ragnarok reveal trailer and screenshots happened, in case I didn't directly say that. Video looks fairly blurry in that thumbnail. Yeah.
All of you.
Yeah, and until these just come to PC. And I honestly would much prefer, yeah, and apparently it's not coming to PC. At least nothing's been said about that. And I don't think the previous one has come to PC. Frankly, I would kind of prefer if they just put out the old ones, ported them cheaply. You don't have to remaster anything. Yes, it would be awkward, certainly, with the sex mini games that were in God of War originally, but I mean, there's not a lot you can really do about that, so just be done with it and put it out there. At a certain point, we are just going to have games that come out and say, hey, this is not, we would have changed this if we were making this today, but we're just going to put a warning sign on the front of it and call it a day, because we still want to be historically accurate and allow people to play these games and see these games, even if we don't agree with the content that's in them anymore, or if we just don't think it lives up to our quality. Like, I don't think Shadow Man, for instance, really lives up to the quality or is particularly as well written as it should be for a modern game, but they still were totally willing to put it out there. Gran Turismo 7 launches on March 4th, 2022. Check that out if you're interested. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt is coming to the PS5 in 2021. That's barely an announcement. A game called Chia, it launches in 2022 for the PS5, PS4, and PC. It's an open-world adventure game, seemingly no longer planned for Steam or Stadia. So what is it coming to? Just Epic Games Store. And what does it look like? Kind of a Moana type game. Little girl running around doing Breath of the Wild style stuff. Honestly, yeah, I guess the Breath of the Wild idea does make some sense. Also, this character seems to be very resilient, doing things that might very well be considered encouraging dangerous activity amongst kids, jumping off of cliff edges into water. As the danger of having a child be your main character certainly is that you have to make it fairly clear that they have some kind of magical power that's protecting them, and that they aren't just doing something crazy.
I accept defeat.
Wow. We lucked out today. We're below 2 hours, and we have gotten
Sleep in
all the victories we needed. It's like there's nothing left to do here. This resets in like 15 minutes. We'll play again. Moving on, Marvel Guardians of Galaxy story trailer is out. Honestly, I just need to see some reviews on this game too, because when it comes out, because I saw the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It was fine, but I never really fell in love with it. So
I bring unto you
I feel like it's probably not going to be something that I'm super enthusiastic about, just because, frankly, the Marvel movies in general have failed to build enthusiasm in me particularly, and they probably need to slow down. They probably need to make sure they polish movies and content a little bit more, build up the characters a little bit more. Arguably, I would say maybe you take it down as much as 20%, reduce the amount of action in each Marvel movie by 20%, so you can increase the amount of character development and dialogue by 20%. Let's see. Deathloop Down the Rabbit Hole storyline trailer and screenshots is available. I don't see any reason to see any more advertisement around Deathloop. It's almost out, and at this point, either it's gonna get reviewed well or it isn't. Here we have one called Kid Amnesia, or Kid Amnesia, I guess is what that's supposed to be. So somebody with amnesia, I would assume. I've heard nothing about this game, so this must be the first announcement. But all they're doing is slowly panning up and showing a corridor and showing a lot of glitches visually. And then there's writing on the walls. It kind of looks like this is going to be some kind of psychological walking simulator. Epic Game Publishing and developers Name the Machine and Arbitrary Good Productions have announced this game. The store page describes it as an upside-down digital analog universe created from original artwork and recordings to commemorate 21 years of Radiohead's Kid A and Amnesiac. So, yeah, I don't think this is even a game. I think it is just straight up a cross promotion for Radiohead's CDs, records. But yeah, I also don't know anything about Radiohead, so you'd have to be a pretty deep fan, I imagine, to be interested in that. It certainly explains why I hadn't heard of that before. The Famitsu sales on Gametsu have been updated to show more. But for the most part, it still seems like it's just a whole bunch of Switch things. Tsukihime, Piece of Blue Glass Moon, came in fairly strong and is a PS4 game in the 6th place. But then the next PS4 game is not until 24th place with Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cuts, and everything else is Switch. You're still selling 50,000 Switches compared to 15,000 PlayStation 5s. Plus, you're getting Switch Lites on top of that to give you another 11,000 compared to the digital edition of the PS5, which is only giving you 1,500, which is almost exactly the same number of units sold of the PlayStation 4. And meanwhile, we are seeing ever-increasing sales of the Series S and Series X, whereas in previous months, we've seen the numbers of Series X and Series S units being as low as 5, 10, maybe you get 100. They have expanded tenfold in their sales numbers. And that is not something to shake a stick at. That potentially shows that with a growing disinterest in PlayStation, or you're getting a slight increase in interest in Microsoft consoles, next generation, there may be a heavier push, a very heavy push to really accommodate the Japanese market. Moving on, we have Kimco RPG Selection Volume 8 for PS4 launching December 16th in Japan. This seems to be probably a Japanese exclusive collection of what look like probably old RPG games. And again, this is PS4 only. I guess there probably is a nostalgic older generation of people that like the old Japanese 8-bit RPGs. So there is an argument to trying to resell those. Although, at a certain point, I am not sure if demand really affects what gets sold in Japan so much. I wouldn't be surprised if games just get put out for sale because the Japanese people assume that it will succeed and have no interest in doing any real market research to find out if that's true or not. Let's see. Get that. Evolve that.
Begin.
The design fault lies with you.
Kill
I am such
that.
a genius. Kiss me goodbye.
If I were
Thy little canary.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Moving on, Kimetsu has Square Enix announcing its Tokyo Game Show 2021 online lineup and schedule. Let's see. What is this one? I can't read it. It's not zoomed out. Let's see. Collection of Saga, Final Fantasy Legend, Deep Insanity Asylum, Dragon Quest X offline and online. I would assume I'd want to play it offline. Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, Final Fantasy IX, 19, the Final Fantasy 14 for PS5, PC, Forspoken, Imperial Saga Eclipse, too many Scarlet Grace games, Marvel Guardians of Galaxy, that's about the only Western style game we've seen so far, Project Triangle Strategy, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, Romancing Saga Re-Universe, and War of Visions, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. If anything, this just shows how Square Enix has far too many eggs in one basket with Final Fantasy and products. I think the Scarlet Grace things are, if not actual spin-offs of Final Fantasy, they are spiritual spin-offs of Final Fantasy. Let's see, The Legend of Heroes Kura no Kisekai has more details on characters. You can check this out if you're interested. There's more teasers around characters, which you kind of constantly see that happen in Japanese games. So you just tease out the characters more and more. Metroid Dread has an overview trailer, which I guess I'll look at this, but I won't show it because Nintendo loves to claim trailers. It's kind of hard for me personally to get enthused around any Nintendo game, as I don't own a Switch and have just never really been at a point where I felt like I could find the extra time to to play games on the Switch. If anything, lately I've been just really terrible about making footage and scheduling footage, so I'm even worse off this month than I was last month. To the point where if I don't really get some scheduling done this weekend, there's a decent chance that in the middle of my Halloween month, which is kind of the reset point, I'll just run out of content completely. Yeah, looking at Metroid Dread, it looks like a modern take on a 2D Metroid game. There's really not a lot more to say there. Gamatsu says Omen of Sorrow for Xbox One launches September 15th and the PC version is coming to Steam. This is a horror-themed fighting game currently available on the PS4 and Epic Games Store. What's interesting about that is I don't recognize it at all. So, yeah, it kind of looks like a Darkstalkers attempt where you have several fighting characters fighting each other. Which, yeah, I guess you could also compare it to something like the, what is that, Rare game, the Rare fighting game with monsters. That might be a more fair comparison. Killer Instinct. Yeah. I guess if a fighting game is getting more platforms though, then that increases the chance ever so slightly that it might be actually good. And so that is something to be enthusiastic about.
My little canary.
GameDeveloper.com says there's a report that China is temporarily suspending online game approvals as restrictions tighten. Seems like China has done that multiple times since the original announcement of their censorship approval process. A UK advertising regulator has warned Star Citizen's developer over showing concept item marketing. Yeah, which I guess in the UK there are tighter restrictions around how much you can lie in an advertisement.
To die or not to die. To die or not to die.
Let's see. Bugsnax developer Young Horses implements a 4-day work week after a unanimous vote. If we're all happier to be at work because we're well rested, I think this is going to be better off in the long run. Now, in all fairness though, I don't think Young Horses as a developer has done anything other than make Bugsnax. Maybe they made Octodad, but I think wouldn't be surprised if they were working for a different company at that point. Or if they had a publisher above them. And I could see publishers coming back and saying, no, you have to work a 5-day work week. Because we, at the publishing office, are working a 5-day work week, and they may try to implement some pressure there. Or publishers just straight up not wanting to do business with people because they've implemented a 4-day work week. Now, inherently, implementing a 4-day work week does not actually solve anything, because you can easily have a 4-day work week that is still 50, 60 hours a week. You're just expecting people to work 12, 14 hours in those 4 days. It seems like it's a little bit better than that, though. Full-time employees were previously expected to work 35 hours per week, so transitioning to 32 hours a week didn't require a huge push. So they were already 5 hours shorter than your average 40-hour week, which in the video game industry is probably a lot closer to 50 and 60. And there is definitely always going to be a question about how many of these people are thinking / working off the clock anyways and just not getting paid for those hours. Now, they probably are not hourly employees, so there's a lot more leniency on the idea of having someone think and answer emails and answer phone calls 24/7, 365 days a year. That's where you get into more of the stories of some of the French laws that say the IT departments must shut down emails, must shut down business phones after the hour, after the time, because there will just always be these workaholics that want to, even though it's not healthy, people don't know what's good for them a lot of times, and people, I think, have proven that they can't be trusted with always making the right decisions. So they literally just have to be forced into relaxing. Some people do. An analyst says cloud gaming services are set to generate $4 billion in consumer spending in 2021, according to GameDeveloper.com. Interesting. Apparently, Epic is shutting down the video chatting app House Party, which, okay. There, I guess, was some thought that maybe Apple was about to let Epic re-release Fortnite in South Korea. Apple has rebuffed that thought, I suppose, is all that. I mean, it's kind of weird to report on a rumor without putting the right kind of title here. This really should say Apple rebuffs rumor that they would let Epic re-release Fortnite in South Korea. I think Apple and the South Korean legislation is more likely to just leave all of South Korea anyways, because I don't think there's a ton of Apple phones being sold in South Korea over Samsung phones, which Samsung is a South Korean company. So I wouldn't be surprised if they can just abandon that market instead of trying to comply with a law like that. It would be bigger certainly if the US or Canada or the UK or Europe passed similar laws, and at a certain point they probably will, but Apple is not going to stick with South Korea because of that. We already talked about this. Take-Two claims delays to the enhanced GTA titles won't affect the fiscal outlook. Enhanced versions of GTA 5 and GTA Online, which that's probably true in the sense that Take-Two has a ridiculous amount of cash they're sitting on, so they can probably avoid any real damage. I guess I should have played that, but whatever. Do this, and this, and this, and then hit that, and hit that.
Now I feel like crying. My beloved mother.
And then GameDeveloper.com says Epic vs. Apple case results in a permanent injunction that could pry open the App Store. This measured remedy will increase competition, increase transparency, and increase consumer choice and information. Permanent injunctions does not mean that it has been decided completely with prejudice. So Apple probably still has a lot of room for appeals here, and this lawsuit is more than likely going to still go up it's more than likely going to get bought. And it's important to specifically understand that a permanent injunction does not all of a sudden mean that Apple has completely lost all of the arguments and all of the fights that are going on. Alright, so specifically, Apple has been permanently restrained and joined from prohibiting developers from including in their apps and their metadata buttons external links or other calls to action that direct customer to purchasing mechanisms, in addition to the in-app purchasing and in communication with customers that prohibits through points of contact obtained voluntarily from customers through account registration within the app. So all that's really saying is that they've been told that they can't prohibit buttons that would take them to other websites to buy V-Bucks, for instance, which was one of the major things, certainly, that got Fortnite taken off the App Store. That being said, that doesn't inherently mean that Fortnite or any Epic game is going to get back onto their storefront. There is a scenario, it's unlikely here, but a scenario where all Apple does is significantly reduce the number of apps on its App Store and says, we're fine, if we can't get that 30% cut guaranteed for some of these apps, we'll just not do business with these companies at all. I bet Apple has more numbers than you'd believe where very few apps get installed on iPhones because iPhone users are not particularly technically inclined and they just want something dead simple and already set up. So you could reduce the App Store from having maybe 100,000 items. Let's say it has that. Now, you could potentially reduce that down to 5,000 items and do only business with a small percentage of companies. And you could still say, hey, we're not stopping you from putting in an in-app purchasing button or anything like that. Yep. I imagine this will just get bought too. Because the idea here and the precedence of this is part of the question. Yep. See, the judge said while the court couldn't conclude whether Apple is a monopolist under federal, state, or antitrust laws by forcing developers to use their own payment services, which allow it to take a cut of sales, the iPhone maker had engaged in anti-competitive behavior under California's competition laws, which at a certain point, if you're making a filing based on California's competition laws, gosh, why can't I say that word? Then this injunction may literally only apply to California, because California laws cannot directly influence other laws in other states. And you could definitely make an argument that if your laws are, if there are laws that are overlapping in such a way, federal law always takes precedent over state law. And so you very possibly have a point here where Apple just challenges the California law and says, no, you can't regulate this. So yeah, you have to be very careful, particularly with GameDeveloper.com, to make sure that they aren't pushing their own narrative and their own propaganda. You have to be careful with everybody on that, but there is definitely a point where a ruling like this is not final. And the interpretation and implementation of it is not really final. Also, I would say you kind of run into this problem where most companies are pretty much just allowed to do whatever they want, whether it's legal or not. So you have to be fairly careful there also, so that you may have a legitimate complaint or even a legitimate ruling, but the enforcement of it is so lackadaisical that it doesn't matter. Okay.
What fine threads you have.
Do this.
This'll be over quick.
Do this. Evolve this. I guess you hit here, and I guess you hit here.
The night wanes.
And see, I could end this stream now at this point, since it's nearly midnight, but I want to go through a few games, and then we'll call it. So, just so we don't have too many games on Monday. Here we have one called Fool's Paradise, which looks like it's a puzzle walking simulator game. It might be interesting. $4.49, English only. I'll put that on the follow list. Here we have one called Legendary Tales, which looks like a VR fantasy dungeon crawler game, which doesn't look terrible. Early access, $34.99 is fairly expensive for a VR game, but honestly, VR games are going to have to start getting to a level of $60 if they want to be of any quality, I think, and maybe it will never actually make $60 as a value because you just can't play VR games that long. Here we have one called Auto Cell, which seems to be a game of life clone simulator, but sometimes done in 3D, which would be different. It's free, English and Chinese. Here we have a game called Evil Soul, which looks like nothing of interest. Diablo clone. Early access, $5.39, English and Chinese. Here we have Holiday Jigsaw Halloween, which we can immediately dismiss. $2.99, English, French, German, and Russian. Here we have a game called Shrine Within, which looks like nothing of interest. Free to play, English only. Here we have Halloween Riddle Mysteries Riddlers. That's a different way to say pictograms, I guess. $2.99, English, French, German, Russian. Here we have Hot Girl Sliding Puzzle, which looks like garbage. $1.79, English only. Part of a 48 game bundle for $26.50. Ridiculous. Here we have a game called Tiny Robots Recharge, which looks like nothing. Here, we'll keep all these cards. Yeah, Tiny Robots Recharge is $3.59. Yeah. Seeing it's a point and click game, and I think it's just kind of a simplistic single screen puzzle game. I might be being a little premature here, though. Maybe there is something here. I'm going to put this on the follow list. Here we have Blood Rain Betrayal Fresh Bites, which is now out. Which, yeah. There's still a question about the Blood Rain games and this. Which way do you go with the Blood Rain games? Do you go with this more flat, cartoony animation style or do you go with the original 3D Blood Rain version? Let's see. I guess I could complete this bundle. Yeah, so do you go with this, or this, or this? Which one's the most interesting? I think maybe this one would be. But then there is also certainly a question as far as whether or not any of these Blood Rain games are going to lead to a new Blood Rain game, which that's the thing they haven't done, is announced a new Blood Rain game, which is what would need to happen really to build interest. Here we have something called Cure Obsession, which just looks like polygonal puzzles. They're calling it a stress relieving game. I would say I am not interested in anything like this. $8.39, English and Chinese. Here we have something called Webbed, or Weebed. I would assume that's Webbed. Playing as spiders. I guess you're platforming and swinging. This might be a bit of a frustration platformer, but I think I have to put it on the fall list. $9.99, bunch of languages. They're calling it a puzzle platformer. It doesn't look like there's a lot of enemies around, so it might be less precision platforming than I think it is. Let's see, play this.
What fine threads you have.
And then in the turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Clash of Legions, which just sounds like it's a name confusion game trying to port a low effort cell phone game to Steam. In-app purchases, but free to play. Single player MMO. Here we have a game called Robo Snow, which looks like a robot snowboarding. I don't get the point of being a robot in snow racing. That seems kind of ridiculous. $13.29, English only. Apparently, Steam refers to these as capsules instead of thumbnails. And these are just screenshots. I watched a GDC presentation of someone who consults on making your Steam page look more attractive, and he's basically giving the exact instructions you would expect somebody who is trying to manipulate the Steam algorithm would give. Like, it's fairly obvious and fairly blatant. He also claimed that almost all of the algorithm is based on these tags, that it does not do any kind of text recognition or deep word association with descriptions or anything like that. It seems not to really connect at all to players. Is this game relevant to you seems to probably back up his claim that it's all based on tags. So whatever game that happens to share a tag with a game, that with this game that you play the most would get mentioned here. But I think there probably should be some more feedback as far as refunds. If something is tagged as RPG Maker and 50% of everybody that plays the game refunds it when they have played other RPG Maker games, then the RPG Maker tag should probably be discounted and de-weighted, and I'm not sure if they are weighted tags or if they are just equally valuable tags. But yeah, Steam has some improvement to make. Steam did put out a new client which changed a couple of pages, it claims. I haven't even really seen it. It does not feel like it was any major change though. So that Steam is still blue and still needing of tweaks here and there. Here we have a game called Kara Deadler 1989, which looks like it's just an asset flip or hidden We're calling it a hidden object game. $3.99 English and Turkish. And see, seeing that it's Turkish almost makes me want to give it more of a chance, but yeah, there is nothing here that deserves, it says it deserves a chance.
100% string and
Okay.
0% fluff.
To die
Hit this.
or not to
I'll
die.
make your taste buds quiver.
Hit this one.
This'll be over quick.
Spin in a twirl and out.
Hit this one.
Puppy to get.
I'll make your taste buds quiver. Hold still.
That.
Hold
And
still.
then that. Is there more reason to play this now?
Truth and lies.
Next we have a game on Steam called Puzzle Fever, which just looks like a Minesweeper clone. $2.99 English only. Would there be a way in which I could close, like, uBlock Origin lets you get rid of things, but it doesn't let you really move things, so I could get rid of is this game relevant to you, because it probably isn't.
Imaginable.
But in most descriptions that still would put the language slightly further below. Yeah,
All to find a brighter
I
future
would
for
need a
everyone.
different plugin or some kind of custom-made plugin to move the English language higher up to this point where it would make a lot more sense. Just a little scroll bar here where you can see all the languages. And
She is the bloom.
yeah, even the buy now button could just be right in this section here. Like they need to rethink their whole layout, I think. This game, Spaceship Troubles, by the way, looks like garbage, so we can dismiss that. Here we have a game called Space Endeavor, which also looks like garbage. Early access, $7.19 English only. And Space Tower Defense, we can also ignore. 3 space games in a row. $1.97 English, allegedly full audio. Alright. Let's see.
What adorable, ephemeral lives.
Let's see, do we want to use / now? Yeah, I guess we do.
Everything was a lie.
Get rid of that. Do we want to evolve this? Sure.
Begin.
Nothing shall do not sully this great
How did I miss that?
Let's see. Next, we have a game that's all in Asian letters. Looks like a low-effort Chinese visual novel. Free, Chinese only. And we have Vacation Adventures Park Ranger 7, which looks like a hidden object game. $6.99 English only. We can dismiss that. Yeah, we have a game called Sleepy Sunday, which looks, they're calling it a beat 'em up. Looks more like a platformer to me. It's not visually polished enough, though. I'd have to say no to this. $7.19 English only. Yeah, this feels too much just like an old NES game. Here we have one called Rhythm Brawl, which also looks not polished enough. Free to play, English only. Here we have one called Bubble Breaking. A lot of garbage games today. $1.99. close that. Here we have the Vampire Regent, which is just a text-based game. $4.89, English only. Alright.
All of you.
Let's go ahead and hit this.
An opportunity for growth.
Sleep.
And hit that, I guess.
Do you understand now?
Well, I could do a massive amount of damage, but I would need
I loved her.
more.
Everything to me.
Here we have a game called Super, which seems like a asset flip attempting to be a Spider-Man type Superman superhero game.
Don't underestimate me.
Yeah. You almost shouldn't even bother to try to make a superhero game if you don't have superhero licenses, unless you just have a really good animator who can make a whole new set of superhero characters. This is $2.54. It's online PvP, English, allegedly full audio.
Tell me what to do, please.
Let's see.
Hostile unit confirmed.
Yep. Let's see. We've got a game called Residual, which looks like there might be something here. This might be an older game since it's being published by Apogee. $16.99 is fairly expensive. This might be a brand new game. This might be an old game.
Queen of the water. She is the bloom.
I guess I have to put this one on the follow list.
Enough of this
Here we have a game called Spell Swap, which
Let go of my hand.
doesn't look like anything of interest. $6.99, English and French. Here we have one called Hindsight 2020, Wrath of Rakshasa. Which there might be something here. $14.99, English only. We'll put that on the follow list. Here we have a game called Cardinal Chains, which just looks like a puzzle game. Of no interest. $2.99, English only. Kind of at this point, I don't think I'm super attracted to doing puzzle games at all.
100% string and 0% fluff.
Okay.
Destroying
Hit
target.
this one.
Together forever.
A
This
spin
one.
and a twirl and out. There's our puppy again.
And this
Hostile
one.
life form detected. Terminating hostile life form.
An opportunity for growth.
Like this?
If this guy can do 1 damage to me, I'm dead. So I shouldn't have played this. Should have played a repair mode. Like, all he needs to do is be able to do 1 damage with 9 cards. That seems very likely that that will happen. Let's see. We have a game on Steam here called The Gardener of the Wild Vines, which looks a little rough visually, but also looks like it's trying to do something different. More of a 3D spin around a column to platform experience. $8.99, English full audio. Seems like you're actually attacking the plants to climb up higher, which might make it the actual gameplay mechanic very frustrating. I could see potentially trying out a game like this and then finding it just too annoying. Here we have a game called Vortex, which looks like nothing. $2.99 English only. Here we have Rico London, which I don't know if this is a spin-off of a previous Rico game or not. $31.49. And I don't know if the previous Rico games were well received. No, it seems like this is the only Rico game from this developer. Alright, so we'll put this on the fall list. This, I believe, is one of those games where you go into a specific room and have to, in slow motion, take out all of the drug guys before they shoot you. So it's a bit more of a strategy game than just a standard first-person shooter. Here we have a game called 1984 Rewired, which just looks like a bunch of neon polygons. It's $5.59 English only. Don't think there's an actual game here worth playing. Here we have a game called Dice Legacy, which unfortunately is already mixed as a city builder board game. There might have been something to this, although I don't know why you would make a Halo style world. Let's see what the reviews are on this one. I bet it's just too small of a land. Russian. Lack depth, much variety even when with the unlocked modes. The gameplay loop is pretty repetitive. Doesn't really deliver in long-term enjoyment, it says. Yep, that's kind of what I was expecting. Let's see, here we have The Artful Escape, which I think we have heard about this one. This is the kind of crazy Annapurna interactive games. I want to double check as far as Annapurna Interactive. It might be a company worth blacklisting at a certain point. Nope, that's not the company I'm thinking of. Okay, well, even though this has 37% positive, I want to give this a little bit more time. Also, this is still feels like a very niche game where not a lot of coverage is happening. I've noticed that Giant Bomb has started to basically cover some cell phone games, which seems really weird, considering there's plenty of console and PC games that they're not covering. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a case where they are starting to directly accept funding from cell phone developers. And it very possibly is another indication that the old Giant Bomb has been just completely changed internally for sponsored content. Here we have a game called Cork of the Dead, which looks like just a joke corgi game. $15.99 in English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Dreamback, which looks like a Chinese asset flip if I was to guess. Early access, free, Chinese only. Here we have a game called Caboose, which looks like it's just an asset flip walking simulator. $3.19 English and Arabic. Life is Strange True Colors is out. It's rated very positively. I think at that point there's the only reason why I wouldn't The only reason why I wouldn't play Life is Strange at this point is just because I don't want to play Life is Strange games. Otherwise, I think you just put that on the wish list. Yeah. I don't think there's a real good reason to play Life is Strange Remastered Collection, which Before the Storm Remastered would be about the one game there, and they still are ignoring the Life is Strange game that happened in between that with the male protagonists. So the brand of Life is Strange is kind of a mess. Let's see, here we have a game called Gate to Site 8, which looks like a dark screenshot horror asset flip experience, walking simulator. $3.39. Here we have Loco Launcher, which maybe there's something here. I'll put this on the follow list. Probably not anything there though. $4.99 English only. Here we have a game called Animal Survival, which I would like a animal simulation survival game. I think I'd like that. I'd like to try it at least. But it's already mixed. Early access, $19.99. That means we can easily dismiss it. Let's see.
Hostile life form detected.
If I were.
Thy little
Terminating
command.
hostile life form.
I can't move.
Here we have Terrain of Magical Expertise on Steam.
Hostile unit confirmed.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's visually polished quite enough for and the kind of game it seems to be as a party-based RPG.
Curtain falls.
It's not particularly interesting. $21.24 is fairly expensive. English full audio.
100% string and 0%
Let's see. Disgaea. Could I click on Disgaea and say don't use this for recommendations because I didn't play Disgaea? Like, see, that's funny because if they're recommending Disgaea to me for as little number of hours as I relatively put into Disgaea, that also tells me that it's probably not a game for me.
What to do, please?
But it also highlights a big problem with
Why is it the string is so bright?
with the Steam recommendation system.
Begin.
Damage heavy.
Next we have a game on Steam called Rift's Cave, which is already rated negatively and looks like it is just an asset flip VR game. 49 cents English only. That's really cheap. Requires the Oculus Rift development kit to the play, which is basically not a standard Oculus Rift then. Here we have one called Brink Traveler, which just kind of looks like an asset flip exploration vacation game. $9.99 English only. Here we have a game called Color Connect, which doesn't look like anything of appeal. $9.99 English only. Here we have a game called Robonauts, which I'm going to skip that one because that's too complicated. Combo Babies. I think we can dismiss this. Pixely zoomed in fighting graphics in a fighting game does not work. $9.99 English only. You want to see the fist make contact. You don't want just a generic round pixel blocks to hit some other pixels, and that isn't the contact you see in a fighting game. Here we have something called the Sand Dunes. which this thumbnail looks way different. From this thumbnail, I would want to give it a chance, but then looking at the actual game, it just looks like this asset flip dark screenshot mess of neon lights. It's just completely disassociated with what we're seeing there. Even the character doesn't look the same. English, Spanish, Latin America. Let's do this.
Hostile unit confirmed.
Do this.
Hostile unit confirmed.
Do this.
Shutting down.
Sleep.
This is not a warning. Destroy heavy.
Such a good guinea pig.
Let's see. Next we have a game called The Octots. Just looks like an asset flip survival game. Early access, $3.49.
Damage. Heavy.
And we have Tales of Arise, which we've seen a lot of promotion for this. We can see it's rated very positively at this point. There's really no reason not to put it on the wish list. That doesn't inherently mean that I'd buy something like the Ultimate Edition or the Deluxe Edition and actually play the Tales of Arise. There's still major questions around the Tales series in general, as far as whether that is something that I
What fine threads you have.
would want to make some focus around.
This'll be over quick.
Let's see.
Oh, my beloved Nava.
Do that. Do that. Next we have a game called Bubble Shooter FX, which
Forces of darkness.
just
Bow
looks like
before my
it's a decent Bubble Bobble game. So I almost want to give it a follow list just for that. $2.54. Let's put it on the follow list and see how people receive it. This will be the last game we play. There's kind of no reason to keep on playing. I think we don't have any missions. And yeah, it's just kind of nothing happening. Here we have a game on Steam called Beat Arena, which looks like a rhythm VR game that doesn't look terrible. So I think we may have to put it on the follow list and just see. And I guess the question would be, is this better than Beat Saber? It might very well be, particularly if you're looking for more anime looking characters and probably some more anime focused music. The actual instrument you're playing, see, is either a piano or guitar or bass or drummer, which that's accommodating a lot of people. Here we have a game called Tower of Origin 2 Worm's Nest, which looks just like an RPG Maker game. $12.59, English and Chinese. Don't be tricked by the succubus character. Here we have NBA 2K 2022, which is mostly negative, 24% positive. So people are really, really unhappy with that. Was this the one that was unfinished? Let's see. If you own 2K 2021, it's a carbon copy of it. This is current gen. Don't believe what some other people are saying about current gen 2022. It's the same as the next gen, with graphics being the only difference wrong. The entire game is damn near different. More importantly, most important difference of all, in my player creation. Badges are completely different from next gen. Yep. So everything is copied and pasted from 2K 2021. Yeah. So the actual fans who bought the game are hating it. Generally, as not a fan, I can just ignore it. It probably highlights an issue, certainly, where a decent number of games are not particularly well received from 2K. Here we have some DLC for Borderlands that are negative and mixed, a Sid Meier's Tales from the Borderlands in 2021, which really wasn't even made by 2K, or actually even really funded too much from 2K, because that was a Telltale game, is the only positive thing that we see. Mafia Definitive Edition in September of 2022 was positive, but then I believe Mafia 2 was not positive. You have a lot of mixed. Borderlands 3 DLC. Yeah. Mixed Mafia 3 Definitive Edition, not positive. A lot of Borderlands DLC. Although Borderlands 3 itself is fairly positive, but even the Season Pass is mixed in reviews. WWE 2K DLC neutral. Borderlands 2 VR neutral. Borderlands 2, even some of the DLCs that I have done with Borderlands 2. I have covered Borderlands 2, haven't I? I have to check. I think so. Yeah, I just haven't done the pre-sequel. I think is the next one to do. XCOM games in 2018 were positive, and NBA 2K Playgrounds in 2018 was positive, and WWE in 2K19 was positive. Yeah, but there's definitely some garbage that, like, you're getting back to things like BioShock Remastered getting released in 2016, but if it's just the remasters of good games really that are getting well received, then that really puts 2K at about 2014 was the last time they put a real game out that wasn't just a remaster and people liked it, and that's the pre-sequel, and people I didn't think even liked it that much. That's a problem. That really highlights that 2K is going in the wrong direction. Here we have a game called Hollywood Jigsaw Easter, $2.99. We probably are either really close to Easter or have already missed Easter. I'd have to check a calendar. Regardless, still not really a reason to buy this. Here we have Detective Solitaire, The Ghost Agency, which just looks like a solitaire game. And I can't imagine playing any more of those. Well, maybe one more of those. One Shadowhand is the one I'd play. English, French, German, and Russian. $2.99. Here we have a game called Bloopy and Droopy, which looks like a Game Boy game, and I'm just never going to play something that looks like a Game Boy game. It could feel like a Game Boy game, but it would have to be in color, it'd have to be zoomed out more, it'd have to have a lot more gameplay mechanics. English, $3.99. Here we have a game called Team Tower, which looks like it is a Deepest Dungeon clone. That might be good. Early access, $19.99, English and Chinese. We'll give it a chance. Put it on the fall list. Here we have Game Developer Simulator, which there's just no point at which I would actually play a simulator game about being a game developer. And this really just looks like an asset flip garbage game. $5.99, bunch of languages. And then we have a game called Drowned Helicopter, which just looks like a helicopter while in the rain. You're rescuing residents from flooding. Theoretically, I guess that theme is something that hasn't been addressed before, because it was only in the past decade or two that we started to see such major flooding and enough helicopters out there that people would start getting airlifted out. I think still the vast majority of people are going to be boated out of a flooded region instead of helicoptered out of a region. I imagine the helicopter is strictly for medical emergencies or people that cannot be moved via boat. This as a game though does not look like anything of interest. $2.99. And then here we have a game called The Rewinder, which looks like a Chinese pixely experience. It's rated very positively, seems to have several puzzles around it. I don't want to come off as somebody who just dismisses everything that's Chinese, and this actually looks decent. $13.49 maybe is a little too expensive, but at very positive rating, that deserves at least a follow, if not just immediately going to the wish list. I'll give it a follow. And then we have a game called Auto Mechanic, which looks kind of like nothing of interest. $2.39, English and Russian. Yeah, the idea of like your center of gravity changing and your platforming that way can be the beginnings of a thought of a game, but it's got to be more than that. There's got to be a lot more to it than just that. Otherwise, you have a very simplistic experience here, and that's what this feels like. It's just an incredibly simplistic experience. Alright, and then that closes enough tabs, I think, to mostly be done with all the games that came out. And let's see. So, like, BioWare here said, we are proud of the work we did on the original Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and genuinely can't wait to play Aspire's remake as we continue our work on Star Wars The Old Republic compared to Knights of the Old Republic. That's very confusing. We'll watch with great interest. May the Force be with you. So that is kind of this is the message of support you should put out, regardless of whether you actually support the project or not. GameDeveloper.com also had an article here about the Knights of the Old Republic remake. And then, let's see. Also, GameDeveloper.com says Twitch is suing 2 users for masterminding the recent hate raids, who allegedly were behind the influx of hate raids targeting streamers of marginalized backgrounds. This, I assume, is probably Twitch's way of saying they're doing something about the hate raids, which they probably shouldn't be done. They shouldn't do anything about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if these are literal just scapegoats that had very little to do with it. They're saying someone named Cruise Control, who allegedly is in the Netherlands, and someone called Creatine Overdose, who is in Vienna, Austria. I thought for a second maybe they were going to name like two popular, like more right-wing streamers. Like, I could certainly see them blaming somebody like Alex Jones or but Alex Jones's audience is not that technically mastermind, or Kiwi Farms creator, like that would have also been a generic person you might try to scapegoat it on. It's just, I don't know if Kiwi Farms has been involved in these quote-unquote hate raids at all, though. So, I guess I'll just say this. Melty Blood type Lumnia has some more gameplay against more of their anime characters fighting each other. They're not all anime girls, but they're heavily in that direction. Let's see. I'm just going to go down my Twitter feed very quickly here to see if there's any new news to talk about. Which on a Friday starting very long, very late, it's highly unlikely there will be new news to talk about. YouTube Studio for desktop is now going to have a black user interface, a dark mode, which maybe that would help me subconsciously get more work done. So I guess I'll try it out, but I'm not really expecting too much there. If you're if you have 1,000 subscribers, you can now put trailers in front of premieres, which, yeah, that would definitely be more work, certainly, to make trailers before premieres. But I could also see the idea of content creators who are only making one video a week or one video a month, then putting a trailer out, and letting that trailer gain hype and convince more people to click the notification remind me button on premieres. Yeah. But the way premieres want to be treated as like someone, the content creator is in the chat while the video is premiering and just responding to the chat, I think that concept has pretty much been forgotten and just de-emphasized. Like, I definitely am not in the chat of any premiere. Sorry if somebody expected me to be there, but I just don't have the time, and half the time would not even be awake when these things, when videos premiere. But also, I just don't think even big content creators are really doing that. Maybe you've got your media manager in the chat pretending to be you. That's believable. But yeah, the idea of a premiere being something of value is still a little weird. Like, it doesn't really make sense, because it's not a stream, and it really is just a new way to promote pre-recorded uploads, which is nice because we do need to promote more pre-recorded uploads, but it's not really getting you more views. At least in my experience, it hasn't gotten me any new views. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.